Right, okay, so welcome back to Friend or Foe again, and this episode was recorded in, like, September of last year in 2016, yeah. But don't worry, because I remember what the Lizard is good at, and the Lizard is good at charging directly into enemies and comboing them, stun-locking them with said charge. You may or may not recall that the Rhino is capable of a very similar tactic, but it's much easier with the Lizard because the Lizard homes in and is a lot faster. The hitbox for Rhino's charge was a little bit awkward simply because of the animations involved, but, you know, Lizard stays low to the ground and it's really easy to just keep doing that consistently without worrying. Doesn't mean that fights are incredibly easy with the Lizard, yes, but, you know, having a more useful version of Rhino's charge is always a positive.
Ugh, this place is creepy.
So I'm trying out a new editing tactic with Friend or Foe. We're just going to skip from fight to fight for this video because the walking segments in between each fight were really dull and I had nothing to say for them, so I was just making you watch them silently anyway. Might as well skip to the part that you hear me commentating over usually. As for this fight, I think it's pretty obvious what our tactic is gonna be. We're gonna hurl the enemies into the pit as often as possible, and if it gets a little too crowded, we'll jump over to the other side, so that way they have to work harder to get us. It works out splendidly, especially since our webbing can reach all the way across the chasm. But yes, if this format is less appealing to you, that's fine, and I'll go back to leaving the walking in. There's not much reason to edit this time, though, because there's a Commander Phantom immediately. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with him, because we have one of our special attacks handy. I don't know if I mentioned this before, I probably did, considering how long these videos have been going on, but each team attack has a different animation depending on who you're partnered with. We're not going to see all of them, and I'm not sure if anyone has seen all of them. This seems like the kind of thing that would have a compilation on YouTube usually, like all special attacks with all characters, except that this game isn't nearly popular enough for that. I think I mentioned before that the barrels are a nice touch and add variety, but there's not nearly enough of them. But, I mean, maybe that's unreasonable of me, because enough of them for me would mean the entire room would have to be filled with barrels. But that seems fine. This game is a bit lacking in the variety. Oh hey, there's Lizard's other attack, that tail spin. Virtually useless.
Gates open. We can go. Looks like trouble.
You know, I remember there being a lot more walking between battles. Maybe that's in the next section. Not, by section, I mean next level? Next no, the next, it's the next level. In the next level, there appears to be more walking. I guess this isn't really an important fight or anything, but it's a good excuse to show off Spidey's web shooters again. These guys are definitely easier to hit if you jump and then shoot, because they kind of move too fast to lock onto with his regular fire. I don't believe I got the chance to mention yet that these larger enemy types for this section, instead of throwing bombs like the ones I think we fought with Rhino, they have this weird toxic breath. I could be mistaken, and we could have fought these enemies with Rhino, but I seem to recall us fighting the bomb enemies with Rhino, but it's been so long. It's been so long. Either way, these enemies are absolutely no concern as long as we have the Lizard because of his charge attack, very easily stunned. Of course, if they do decide to spew their toxic breath at us, we can tie them up with our constrictive webbing. God damn, I can't even remember what I called that. The point is that we can deal with them from a distance if they decide to try that nasty shit, making them pretty much harmless regardless of which character we favor. That being said, the spawning layout is really damn good in this section for their enemy type. They spawn on either side of you in groups of 2, which makes it a lot easier for their For their very spread out toxic attack to do a lot more damage, it pretty much covers the entire center of the arena that way. When they're all on one side, it's so much easier. But while I have practiced these segments, I'm not perfect, and thus I did fight in the middle of the arena. That's probably for the better, so that way you could see the enemy layout and the idea behind it. But now that they're all on one side, we can go back to constricting them and making them harmless. You know, this game isn't all that different from the beat-em-ups I really enjoy. It's just so damn long for the design it has. I feel like it could be cut down immensely without losing too much of the appeal. I mean, yeah, the enemy types are a good touch. There's a variety in the enemy types, and I like that. But they do still get old, you know? The locations are really long. Maybe 2 levels per location would be a lot more reasonable. It is true that dying doesn't do anything, as discussed way back in the first episode, but I mean, all I need is either satisfying combat or challenging combat. Ideally both, but if you give me one of those, it's good enough, you know? For me, the satisfaction in Friend or Foe is enough, in spite of the numerous balancing issues, which I think is saying something. On the other hand, it may just be because I like Spidey that much. Who's to say the game isn't offensively bad and I like playing it? It's not mediocre enough to get me upset.
There is trouble ahead, Spider-Man.
Oh boy, trouble. That can't stay closed.
The witty banter isn't always great, but on average I think it works out. I think I said before that this game has really weird ideas about the characters inside it. It's way more friendlier than folier, I think is what I said. How all the characters are way more friendly child-appropriate versions of their original design. Like young child-appropriate, we're talking toddlers here. For example, the Lizard, one of the most tragic characters in Spider-Man, kind of reduced to a generic science guy. He's been used in some of the most deeply emotional stories in the video games, and the comics, and the novels. But in Friend or Foe, he's kind of a discount beast from the X-Men. He doesn't even struggle with the same identity issues that the Beast does. And I'm not gonna lie, this bothers me a bit more than the other character interpretations in Friend or Foe. Because, you know, it's the core of his character. You know, this once kind man turned into a completely feral monster, and incredibly mercilessly brutal depending on which adaptation you're reading. But yeah, he just kinda talks like Beast now. Another thing that bothers me in the same way as this is in a lot of cartoon Marvel adaptations, the Hulk isn't angry. Like, he stays in his Hulk form a lot and seems to be able to switch in and out of it at will. And when he's in his Hulk form, he isn't angry. He's not fueled by rage. Uncontrollable rage. That's the point. He turns into the Hulk and becomes a machine of absolute destruction. You know? It's kind of in his name. But in place of him being angry and furious, they just make him stupid. Like, are those interchangeable? Because that happens a lot in the cartoons. Instead of being angry, Hulk's just stupid when he's green. Or worse, his character becomes boiled down to likes food a lot when in Hulk form.
Prepare to be webbed.
An excellent threat.
I never noticed until this commentary recording all those bugs crawling across the floor right there. That's kind of a nice touch. It's a lot of bugs though, and they come in such specific amounts. Maybe it has something to do with an ancient curse, you know, only a certain amount are allowed to be released into the world at a time, but at a constant rate. Like there's a new group every 5 seconds.
Fear not, Spider-Man. Together we can best him.
Hey, don't worry about me, man. I know we can handle him because I can tie up his face with my constrictive webbing. And then you just smack him, you know? You smack him like crazy. Just stand right there and use your special attacks all the time. That's all any of the AI partners do during these fights with Commander Phantoms. They run up and use their special attacks. Much easier if they have projectiles, that way they die less quickly. You know, if I were designing this game, I'm not saying I would ever be in a position to do that. But if I were designing this game, after this commander would be where I end the stage. The commanders are clearly meant to be big fights, even if they're not difficult, you know? You usually fight them entirely alone. And this seems like a good place to stop. It's been a while. We fought a lot of battles here. But instead of that, we have another completely average fight after this one, and then the level ends, and that just doesn't make sense to me, but oh well.
Time for some stress relief.
Okay, Spidey, I get that punching things can be good stress relief, right? That makes sense to me, but what's stressing you out, if not the battles? This entire adventure consists of two things, battles and walking everywhere, lots of walking. So if the battles aren't stressing you out, is the walking stressing you out? Because otherwise you have no stress to get rid of. This doesn't really strike me as a world where people get stressed to begin with, aside from Nick Fury. Nick Fury exists to get bothered by the computer, but everybody else seems to live a relatively stress-free life, including the lizard.
I don't know what's worse, those tombs or this sand.
These guys aren't gonna know what hit them.
I mean, maybe they won't at first, but I think eventually they'll catch on. You pretty much only use a grappling hook, that's like all you do. Anyway, good old Black Cat is back, as she generally is, for at least once per location in this game. So you might have been able to infer from the level layout, this is going to be a good time for me. So many places to hurl people off ledges, and we're playing as Black Cat and Spidey, who are excellent at these things, and I fell down a pit, but that's okay. This level is also aesthetically far superior to the last one. The idea behind it is interesting. We're still in an ancient Egyptian something, but there's broken scaffolding all over the place, which is pretty neat. You know what, that's probably going to happen a lot.
I'd start punching right about now.
Please, I know what I'm doing.
This is definitely the fight I remember most from this level, and I always tend to stay over here on the bridge and just pelt away at the guy on the left with my spider bullets. Damn, I know there's a better name for that. But anyway, I constrict the guy on the left and just shoot at him over and over. It's much better than fighting them in the center, where two of them will be attacking us at the same time. I don't think the level layout was meant to account for this, but it's the most efficient way to take care of them without getting killed. After we remove this guy, the fight essentially turns into a normal battle with a Commander Phantom. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think you've seen this particular battle a few times at this point. At least there were a couple pots around for us to hurl at the guy. And as always, the AI stands directly in front of the Commander and just spams their special attack. It's even worse with Black Cat because her attacks are technically projectiles, so she should really be standing further back than this. At least the game tried to mix things up by giving us two commanders to fight at once, but as always, I find a way around the intended design. You can't hide from me. I will find a way. So there may be less scaffolding in the next room. It's not really a room. But we did walk through a doorway. There may be less scaffolding here, but there's no shortage of places to hurl phantoms off the cliff still. So we're gonna keep doing that. I like to stay down here where there's less of them. We could hurl them off the cliff from up there, but it's a lot easier to tackle them down here where there's fewer. It's a shame that a black cat can't hurl them quite as far as Spidey. I assume for character balancing reasons, but whatever. You may have also noticed there's a damn lot of enemies in this fight, so if we didn't hurl them off the cliff, this could take a while. Thankfully, we're just gonna keep doing that, as always, because it's very hard for me to get tired of it. You know what probably would have made this game even more satisfying? Environmental damage. It doesn't even have to be permanent environmental damage, just when you smash enemies against a wall, a bit of crumbling brick flies somewhere, instead of just dust clouds. I guess they're holographic, so that wouldn't make a lot of sense, but we're punching holograms in the first place, so, you know, I don't think that's a good excuse.
I'd start punching right about now.
And now we're back to that sweet, sweet scaffolding. There's clearly an attempt here to make aesthetically pleasing levels that also fit very well with the theme that goes on in each location. And this one in particular is surprising and interesting, but I think most of that may go unnoticed to people who play the game because it's so damn repetitive. Regardless of any artistic integrity going on here, if your game is repetitive enough, people ignore all that in favor of boredom. And boredom's not really a choice, but that's just what happens. My proposed solution to this, if I can't change the level design, is that the game should have come with a built-in timer. It should only let you play for an hour, and then it will make you wait a week. Yeah, sure, the game will take 5 weeks to complete that way, but you won't get tired of it, and it will seem a lot more fun. This is a fun game, it's just people try to play it all at once, and I can't advise that. That would give me fatigue, something awful. I was going to say for a moment that I couldn't remember who the boss of this location was, but even if we weren't briefed on him beforehand, that would be pretty dumb, wouldn't it? It's kinda obvious who the boss is gonna be here.
I'd like to thank you all for being so very punchable.
And kickable, don't forget how much fun they are to kick.
This is the last fight of the level before we tackle Sandman. And these enemies are a bit too large to hurl over the cliff, but we haven't seen Black Cat's projectile in, what, a single video? So, you know, maybe you missed it or something. God help you if you're watching this shit in a playlist, though. I can't even begin to imagine how many times I repeated myself. I try my hardest, but I really don't have access to all those old videos right now. They're on my external hard drive, and they take up a lot of space, man. I'm a little upset that Black Cat can't. I said that twice. Black can't. I'm a little upset that Black Cat can't wall run or wall jump. That seems like something she should be able to do. I understand they probably had a budget and time constraints. You know, everybody does. I'm just saying that would be neat.
Combo level 2. And stay down.
According to our scans, that should be the resting place of the meteor shard.
I'm not seeing anything here but a whole lot of sand. Oh boy.
So Sandman's a pretty average boss fight, but that's not to say there aren't some interesting things about him. He shoots sand waves at us, which knock us into the air and make it difficult to get close unless we use the nearby platforms. After we hit him once, he then teleports down here where we can deal some real damage. Of course, after we deal a significant amount, he moves back to shooting sand waves or sometimes fists at us. Much easier to avoid the fists if we stay on the platforms, but move too far left or right on said platforms and the fists come out of the walls, so watch out for that. Not quite as exciting as the fight against Scorpion, but it uses his powers in a decent way.
Hey! That hurt!
The little scenes between the phase transitions always crack me up, and I'm not sure if that's intended, but they always say such stupid and generic things like, "I'ma hit you with my head," or "Ow, stop that. Quit it. You're such a jerk face." The fight doesn't really mix up too much. It's not like the Scorpion fight where the platforms get really screwed up. By the way, Black Cat's grappling hook shockwave, great way to trigger Sandman's teleportation from a distance. Makes the whole fight much easier, and I appreciate that. It's really cool to be able to use it for something strategic. Sometimes he summons fists in addition to his sand waves, but just stay on the platforms.
Ain't nothing wrong with you, a good beating won't fix.
Hang on, I'm getting good at this part. You were being mind controlled, but I totally saved you. And now you're gonna offer to help me find out who did this to you.
Where am I?
Okay, so you were being mind controlled, but I totally saved you.